Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Waller. Looking forward to our conversation today, Matt.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much for having me on.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. So, Matt was just spotting. We have a lot of Texans on there. A lot of people from Texas on the pod. It's a hotbed for really great guests, I guess,
It is.
and a big state. Huge, right?
It's,
How many Texans are there? How many people live in Texas?
oh gosh, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I know that I remember at one time I lived in Wisconsin for a little bit, and there was 4 million people in Wisconsin, and I remember there was 4 million in Houston alone. So,
Wow.
gosh, the population of Texas must be much more than that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm so I think I'm reviewing the list. You've got some friends too. That's really kind of those
Ah,
Texans I recognize they're all my friends. So this is
yeah,
great.
cool. So, listeners, Matt's an advocate, as advocate for foster. You've also fostered yourself. You and your wife have fostered, and he's also the chair of is it the founding chair? Is that how you call it? I think
Yeah, so founding
of
chair of the
One
board for
Accord for kids. Yeah.
right.
So,
That's right. Hmm.
a great mix of lived experience and stuff that you've learned over the years. Looking forward to diving into that. So.
Yeah,
I'd like to start with this question, right? Thriving. What does thriving mean for you as a human being, right? What
yeah,
does thriving mean for you?
yeah. I think this is a great question. I think I love it that and get to hear the different definitions from the podcast, and I think it's excellent to remember that thriving is it's kind of I guess the goal where we want to be. So much of us when we're just surviving or we're just making it through. Thriving is where we find our place, where we have um, we're not we're not concerned about just the day to day, but we're able to like work on ourselves and grow through that. It's not we're making it through an illness or making it through something that's come up, but we're able to have some growth in there.
Yeah.
That's
And I guess finding our place, you can do it quite literally, right? You could think about finding our place as a young person, as somebody who has been placed or is available for adoption, or somebody who is in the care system and finding a place to live with a foster parent, short term and longer term, if that changes that way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, finding that place. I remember even we're actually doing a foster dot Q&A tonight here in West Texas. And so I love the question that we always get, what if I get attached? And I love we have this, so it's One Accord for Kids. We say that we're a community development organization for, we say child protection and adoption. And we always get the question, what if I get attached to a foster child that's coming in? And our network of child placing agencies, foster agencies, adoption agencies will all tell you, we hope you get attached. That's what the kids need is they need that attachment to come in and feel comfortable enough to be themselves, to make mistakes, because that's what kids do. And then also just to have fun. And so we hope they get attached. We hope that the foster parents can lean into that relationship. And when the adult leans in, the child's going to lean in too. And when the adult can be hardy, that's when the child can start just being a kid and just enjoying themselves. And I think thriving happens then. We forget that kids are kids, and um, they're working out how to be in the world. And so a lot of that comes with just little mistakes, or it comes with also just fun and playing and milk spilling and just enjoying that,
Yeah.
enjoying them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When I was thinking, when you mentioned about this, getting this question,
Mhm.
what if I get attached? As you were talking about it, I thought they will.
Yeah,
You will get attached.
yeah,
That is, and you're saying, well, that's the aim,
yeah.
right? Um,
I mean, just like you and me, I mean, we've got some kind of connection. And it's through through a device and all that, you're going to it is natural and is supposed to happen. God made us to have this connection. And in order for if we've been broken or we've been hurt by relationships, it's going to take relationships to heal. And so we need those willing adults to step in for that healing process to happen. And I don't want to I want to be clear on hurt by relationships. I never want to paint the biological parents as as the ones that is evil or is wrong. Just as it's a community coming around the community coming around people that are just that are struggling. And I hope it's always that foster care is the purpose of foster care is to reunify kids with families, to help families thrive in the situation they're in, so that then they can be reunified with kids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'm seeing more and more clearly is like we're putting the kids first. We want the kids to thrive.
Mhm.
If we want the kids to thrive, the parents, the whether adoptive parents or resource parents or biological parents, right? They need to be thriving too. If we
Absolutely.
want them to thrive, then the professionals that are supporting those supporting those caregivers, they need to be thriving. And
Mhm.
and for those professionals and volunteers in some cases to be thriving, then the people that are leading the the organizations,
Yeah.
those organizations, they need to be thriving too. So it's like a is it a golden thread or something? It's we're all kind of we're all being impacted both by one and one another, and that's how that I don't know. Is it golden thread? I don't. What does it look like for
I
you?
think, and no, I love that. I love the analogy of a golden thread. I've been recently, I spoke at a church recently, and we talked about the shalom of the city, and shalom is peace, and so the peace and the welfare of the city. If the Israelites would seek out the peace of the city, then that peace comes back to them as well. And so the idea that that thriving and that welfare, that kind of love for your neighbor, if we kind of enact that, if we are actually doing that and loving our neighbor, then that comes back to us. And I think what I also think is part of that is, and I haven't broken it down, so I'm just kind of thinking about things in my on my own, is that I think a part of that is just giving grace to each other, right? Forgiving for the hard things that happen. Um, you know, Even this morning, I have a thing with one of my kids, and we had to show grace for each other because we just didn't react in the right way. And so I think there's an element of grace and just understanding that um, we all just make mistakes, and so we all have a genuine appreciation for each other as well for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Peace is big, and
Yeah.
when I think about foster care and it's and why the stuff that kids have been through, right? The
Yeah.
kids with the adverse childhood experiences have been through.
Yeah.
I think about how rare peace may be in their life,
Yeah.
how infrequent that may be, how short-lived that peace
Yeah.
may be. And I also think, but I also, when you relate this back to church or shalom, or
Yeah.
synagogues, right?
Mhm.
They are places of peace
Yeah.
as as well. So I don't know what
Yeah.
you make of all that.
I think you bring up excellent points that, we we work and operate and serve in a big system, the state of Texas, the foster system is relatively centralized. They're trying to decentralize it to put it into some terms. Um, I'm reminded of a quote from um, Mother Teresa that said, "If you want to go home, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family." And I think we can do what we can do for the system, and we work hard for it, but realize our control is limited, and that the peace that I can really bring um, to my world is the choices I make. You know, choices I make, who I trust. Um, those are the big parts of it, and you know, the things I maybe choose to believe. I think too. I've one of our former board members. She adopted she's adopted. They've adopted three kids, and one of the things she said is when they brought them in, she says we just make their world small. And I think there's something beautiful to like realizing, hey, let's, if you're struggling with some peace, like just making your world small for the kiddo, um, pulling them in and just saying, hey, we're just going to hang out at home, and making that world just real small for them as far as just limiting decisions and giving them agency within those decisions, um, and close interactions, and not going out. I'm sure the UK is no different from the US, in that there's always got something going on, right? You're always bouncing from one thing to the other. But I think there's been times where we just say, hey, we're pulling all that in, and we're not going to do those things. And so making those decisions to just make their world small is is a powerful thing. And I feel for there are people out there that just can't do it. It's too hard to make their world small, and so they have to thrive in that go atmosphere and figure out for themselves how to do that. Um, mhm.
I was thinking as you were describing that, something popped into my head, and I don't know where I got it from. I think it was from a leadership guy, but I can't remember, or a leadership woman, for that matter. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah.
But something like slowing down to speed up.
Mm. Yeah.
So I was thinking, if you make the world smaller and you slow down, the adoptive mum, right? She is creating a she's making the world small because she's got more chance of peace, having a
Yeah.
peaceful house,
True.
peaceful household, a peaceful home than
Yeah.
with all the chaos going on out there. And
Mhm.
slowing down to speed up would be slowing down in the amount of what we're trying to do in
Yeah.
that space to
Mhm.
speed up the relationship
Mhm.
building process. I was thinking that how strong a metaphor that would be for, especially for foster parents,
Yeah.
as well too. But that's kind of my take on it, and I'm looking in from the outside.
Yeah.
What about you from your lived experience having fostered? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, we've had a we've had a great journey. We actually, when my wife and I started the foster journey, um, we were struggling to have kiddos, and took that as a sign to say, okay, let's start looking outward towards this foster care and adoption. Well, really, it was adoption at the time, and then we learned of the foster system, that it was there was some that there were families out there that struggled, that just needed help. And the help to give was just to take kiddos for a little while, and we understood that in that regard. Um, and so and then with the potential that sometimes just doesn't work out and that you adopt. And so we went through the training and learned a lot about the foster system, but then jumped into we actually lived in a pretty rural place, more rural than where I'm at in Midland, um, and just never got a kiddo in until finally somebody picked us basically to take this little boy. And it was we had to make his world small. He came to us on like 2 days before his first birthday, And so we got him a cake, and it was my daughter's birthday the next day too. So they had back-to-back birthdays, my other daughter. Um, and we had this, so we had to come down with a party, and so we had it came up with a party for him and celebrate his first birthday. And so that was a big world. But then when everybody left, we had to get back to a small world. And the idea was just that we can make things slow and make things predictable for him. And it was really valuable. And we even see that today. I've gone through several trials throughout our times with him. He had a major back surgery. He's had, we just kind of you just slow things down a little bit for him too. And then through the foster care process, we when we moved to Midland, we had a couple of kiddos that came through foster care as we continued to foster, and um, we were, some that came from really, really terrible trauma, and some that came from um, just a rough household. And so, in both those instances, it was just slowing down life, and um, just keeping things really uh, controlled and really, um, really put together. And so, um, it was. I think about Karen Purvis and her teachings, which she talks about having high structure and high nurture. And so we just elevated both those very much so, um, and had a great time with the kids that we had through come through.
Yeah. And what did you learn about parenting them that translated into the way that you parent your biological kids?
Yeah. Gosh, a lot of things. I think there was the importance of of so when you get a foster kiddo in or an adoptive kiddo, you really have to make, or when you adopt, my experience is that we had to make a choice to love. And so you start strategizing, how am I going to fall in love with this child? Or how am I going to um, create an atmosphere that starts to create connection and bonding in an appropriate way, that this child is comfortable, as well as that, really that this child is comfortable. And so there was things that Karen Purvis had talked about in her writings that we used, where it was just giving choices, and I mean, even at a young age, and then talking through everything at a young age, for them to help give them words as they went. But then also we would, I would use glancing eye contact with them, because maybe eye contact was hard. Remember we had one kiddo that eye contact was difficult, and so I just would kind of look at them and then look away. And the idea was just to get them a little bit comfortable with it. Or they've talked about nurture groups. And so during dinner, there was times where I would feed them with my hand and just feed them. And the idea was just to create a moment. And it wasn't like I fed everything. It was just one thing, hey, eat this too. And so we made things very, you had to kind of calculate, how are you doing it? And then work through it in that way. And so now with my biologicals, and even with my adopted son, we do a lot of the similar things. I don't feed them anymore, but I do want to make sure they're fed. And when I notice things, I'm like, hey, are you thirsty? Are you hungry? You must be hungry. You just got done with practice. Let me get you a bar, or you've got to be thirsty, and so I'll bring water with me. Um, Thinking of those physiological needs, and then realizing that that's my opportunity to connect with them by providing it, not just giving it to them, but like realizing, oh, I get to be their dad, and I get to be that provider for them
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. So being intentional about creating opportunities to connect, but
Exactly.
slowly, right? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's a tuning, it's an art thing. I think that's the whole thing. Is people say, well, parenting it isn't a science, it's an art. but we were brought up on sciences. You know, if we do this at school, we were brought up. You know, like
Yeah.
you've got a list of uh, a list of items that you're going to need, equipment for
Yeah.
the science lab, and you've got a method, scientific method, how you're going to put these things together. But that's that. So we're raised in
Yeah.
this space where there are
Yeah.
processes and
It
protocols, whereas it's far more about art than it is about science.
it is, and it's at the same time there's a if you can get curious, maybe not scientific, but curious. The scientific method is able to feed our curiosity. I got to teach when I moved to Midland initially. I taught physical science, a science class. I got taught a literature classes, and for the school my kids go to, and it's a blend. It's an art and science. It's there's a if I can be curious enough about how I engage my children, right? And try things, smiling more, eye contact. Um, I lots of, you know, I tousle their hair. I get excited when I see them in the mornings. So they know that they're welcomed. We get excited, my wife too. So if we can engage in that way, if we can jump in that way, let me say that I it's an art as well as like the curiosity of a science. Like how can I change this? What can I do to tweak? I think one of the things they've talked about is being a student of your children. And so just examining them and we've gone so far as to keeping a diary of what's going on with a particular kiddo when they're struggling with something. So
Yeah.
mhm.
I love this whole thing about curiosity and openness.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like me and my wife haven't got any kids, but I hear a lot about time pressures. And you mentioned this earlier on, people are always doing stuff. How can we make curiosity, um, time and space for curiosity?
Yeah.
I'm asking the wrong question? I don't know.
No, I think I think you're right. I think we can um maybe it's in the States or maybe it's, West Texas or something where it's like, oh, rub some dirt on it, and child gets hurt, you just rub some dirt on it and keep playing. And it's somewhat needed, but it can also be a dismissive attitude. And I think if we, pull them in and say, okay, what really hurts about that? What's going on? We're not dismissing that pain. We're not necessarily, but we're appropriately tending to it. And so I think that curiosity for us to say, okay, how can I actually step into this moment with this other human? Um, and let me tell you, like, I come from a biblical background. The making another human is like and engaging with another human or having a child is something that like that lasts forever, right? And scripture talks about you're going to be married but you're not married in heaven, but I'm always going to have kids. And so this person that I get to invest in and will one day be as C.S. Lewis says, an everlasting splendor or an immortal horror. And so I think I have the opportunity to see, what splendor can this child turn into one day?
So it's where you're parenting from, I guess, is it?
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
It's about a philosophy. I'm painting it as something
Yeah.
that's kind of tactical,
Yeah.
and you're coming from a far more of a what's my mission here? What's my
Yeah.
it's not strategy. It's beyond it's beyond tactics. It's beyond strategy. It's kind of where you're coming from. It's your whole philosophy of
Yeah.
kids, everlasting splendor.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're really helping me process this. I appreciate it. You're really good at this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, what? So if we shift it for a moment in terms of obstacles to thriving. If I'm going to
Yeah.
kind of go with what you're talking about here, it's about a lack of a lack of curiosity and being having a fixed mindset that's gonna that's gonna be a barrier to helping our kids thrive. What other barriers do you see to to this thriving?
Yeah, I think, you fixed mindset. I think you're accurate to say that this is the way it is, or gosh, my child's smart. We tell our kids a lot. They work hard. Um, and that kind of gives them a doesn't settle into a fixed mindset. That's excellent point you bring up. But I think it's also this we feel like we have to chase something. And it's for such a time as this. This is I will not get to be a dad of a 5-year-old ever again. Right. My youngest is 5. And so this is my last year to be a father of a 5-year-old ever. And so know that, we have a limited amount of time with these these people. And eventually we're letting them go. I've got the rare opportunity of next year my oldest will be a senior in high school and my youngest will be in kindergarten. So the two bookends, the end of I guess primary school, the end of before you go off to college, and then the beginning of it all. And so I imagine I'm going to be a puddle of goo for most of that year. But things that will get in the way of that, I think expectations. I have this expectation of how my daughter's senior year should go, or I have this expectation of how my youngest daughter's kindergarten year should go. I have an expectation of a sport my child should play, and reality is that I just need to enjoy them. I just need to enjoy who they are and major on the majors and minor on the minors. So expectations. I think that gets into time, how much time we spend on other things and the distractions, calling a distraction, rather than what's going to give me the traction I need um, in with my family, and even identifying within work and within other responsibilities I have in life, what actually are the important things for me to do. So I think it takes kind of some forethought there.
Yeah. So just drawing a couple of threads there that I see, perhaps holding our expectations more loosely and
Yeah.
and maybe holding our beliefs,
Yeah,
what we see as fixed,
yeah,
more loosely. I mean, I'm not talking about like a belief in God belief. I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about a belief in X has to happen for me to be happy or
yeah, yeah. I think that's very true. And I think, it's realizing what are the important things for me, and I have to do it a lot. Midland produces oil. Our Permian Basin, we more oil is produced here than any, and then all of the U.S. combined, right? And so there is a lot of wealth and a lot of just things that come from that. But what I found is the friends that um, the bottom line, the ones that are happiest, the ones that are thriving here, are the ones that value their time with their family and value the time with friends. And wealth isn't the center of their life, right? And so for that's what I found. And then translating that to myself, which obviously I'm in child welfare. I don't have oil money, but realizing that, my truly the things that will last, truly the things that will be great are those are those things that are in relationships and friendships, as well as, and then primarily realizing in this stage of my life that it's the kids. My wife and I focusing on our kids,
Yeah.
appropriately focusing that.
Yeah. When at the start of the piece we were talking about your growth, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
We talked about we talked about I'm finding a place, right? So finding a
yeah,
place, and then we went where I went to with that. What does growth mean for you personally, and I guess as a dad?
yeah, yeah. I think, we when it comes to growth, I think we um just getting better. And when I think of growth, but I think that there's a value in getting better for myself and for my mind, for my body, for my heart, for my soul. But there's also a great benefit to my children seeing me do that, seeing me grow, right? When they see me uh, thrive and take care of myself, or push myself in a way that is not expected, for them to see it, um, you know, then they'll want to implement that too. We're seeing that with our daughter. She's choosing hard things, and my wife and I are pretty pleased with the hard things she's chosen. And so and I can't help but think that's because she's seen her mom work so hard, and because she's seen mainly her mom work so hard.
Uh,
Man.
yeah.
So, but
Can you give us an example, obviously within privacy and
yeah,
those sorts of things?
yeah. So she's like, you know, my daughter really, like, I say, she values relationships, and so she'll step into hard relationships. She will um, and take on responsibilities for her classmates, and she, she's a kid, so she'll voice her frustration, but that that doesn't change her actions, where she still will step in to serve and to be with. And I'll say that my wife, my wife is she's learned that from her, where it's just this tireless effort to keep the family engaged, keep the family going. I'll say that probably through our foster care journey, our oldest daughter kind of stepped through it all with her. We said, hey, like, you're gonna have to get a TB test. You have to be tested for tuberculosis. That was just one of the state requirements. And so, what does that mean? It means we have to draw blood. So you're going to get pricked with a needle. She's like, what? I have to. And I was like, that's just, and she's like, okay, I'll do it. And so she does that. She has walked through us. When we moved to Midland, we actually started a resource closet for foster and adoptive parents, which really is kind of impetus of what started um,
Yeah,
One Accord as
one
well.
accord. Yeah.
And we and she, I've got pictures of her, helping to organize. And so she has seen that not only um do we work hard in school, but we work hard in serving our community. And that's now turned into a job, which I'm so grateful for. And so she's seen that as well. And so I've really loved just being able to go, I call it family on a mission, for us to work together towards these goals. I had the opportunity this last weekend. We were helping with an estate sale that was gonna benefit One Accord, and so we had to go, and we just packed up. So I got my kids all together, and we did this serving opportunity together. And so it was that's where I see it. I see, if we can do things elbow to elbow with our kids, and um, step into hard things, and they not see it in a way that they're burdened by the stress of it, but see it in a way that that we're just taking responsibility for our fellow man, or stepping into a hard spot to help somebody. um, I think that when they see that, they're able to just embrace and then carry that over and realize that this is just part of life that we do. um, we have, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps if I draw a couple of things together from that, and the growth idea, how do you see the relationship between uh, trauma, growth, and thriving, and obstacles to thriving? How do you kind of disentangle all that lot?
I I cannot imagine the trauma that children have gone through. I cannot imagine the trauma that adults are living with. Um, and so I come from a place of humility that, and kind of I don't have much of that lived experience. However, I'd say that but having walked through some things with the children, um, I think I think I think there's a few things that help us with that. Um, some things you can't change, and so it's just accepting. When it comes to thriving, accepting it, that this is the hand I've been dealt, and then just stepping into that moment. Um, we have a kind of a saying within our culture, work culture, is having a understanding you're here, where you're at here. um, and that can be an acquired taste. um, and know that where you want to get is there, and so the path, and part of that path to get there is realizing those emotions you have, right? Those emotions that come up, they're real, but they're telling you something, right? And I can't relate to the emotions that come from the trauma of people's lives, but those emotions coming up, that we also have a thing that we've used with the kiddos, that we used at the school I worked at too, is that it's is feel, think, act. That whenever you have that feeling, right, you can think about it, like where is it coming from, and realizing that feeling doesn't have to control your actions, right? And it just does sometimes, and we have to give ourselves grace and forgiveness for it. I did this morning. I had a feeling and I acted, didn't think about it, and I had to apologize. um, and I have to forgive myself, and I have to forgive my kids, or I have to ask forgiveness from my kids rather. um, and so I think having a structure in place to understand when this happens, if I have a feeling, I'm going to think about it. I don't have to act on it, but then also enough grace to say, all right, I can be forgiven for, I can forgive myself for this, if the action is inappropriate or anything like that. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Links back to the humility, then I think links back to the curiosity.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's, I think it's just, I think people try to act as best they can. And so the posture of like of humility and curiosity, that helps. And even if it's fake, it at least can help the situation out. Um,
Do you remember when you learnt that feel, think, act?
it was, I think we've talked about it quite a bit at the school I was at, and we've used it here, the school that I taught at. And then, honestly, it came up. We are reading through Plato's Republic with my students, and it came up then too, where he talks about it in the sense of kind of your three parts of the soul. Gosh, some philosophy people are gonna, bag me for this, but as I recall, it was like you're led by the stomach, you're led by the heart, you're led by the head, and the stomach is your like the things you want and things that you need that you take, where it's those are like desires, and then your heart is your passion, and then your head is your logic, and you always want to have rightly ordered things where your head comes first, and you anything that comes from the stomach or comes from the heart is filtered through the head before you do action. So that was, I mean, gosh, I was 35 plus whenever that came up, and I was like, oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
So,
It, 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 it,
giving myself,
it,
the freedom
it,
to learn.
it's great. I mean, one of the things I'm a big proponent of is empowering our kids to change rather than to change themselves, for themselves to change rather than
Yeah.
trying to get them to change. And
Mhm.
a simple model like feel, think, act,
Mhm.
we can we can give them that model. We can give them an example from our own self, from our own world, and we can live those examples. And then we're making ourselves wrong rather than making them wrong. So we're
Yep.
showing that we're learning by our mistakes, and we've got the grace, right? We're making ourselves wrong, but we're giving ourselves grace in that wrongness too, which all seems to me to be perfect kind of life lessons and empowerment stuff for kids rather than you can't say rather than a finger wagging, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there's for kiddos, I think it was Karen Purvis that said, and I keep talking about her, and I hope the listeners are somewhat familiar with her
because it
writing.
comes out of TBRI comes out of Texas, doesn't
That's
it? Well,
yes, yes, it does. Yeah. And so it's really popular here. And I just learned recently that it's more popular here than other places. So I'm learning myself. But one thing she talks about, she says, if we're giving more than 3 or 5 words in our instructions and we're spitting in the wind, like you gotta give short instructions. And
yeah,
I think the idea of a mental models and little little bits are so valuable for us to kind of understand, okay, what's going on. And then repeating those. I've got a buddy who has coached his son in baseball, and I just can't get over how good of a coach he is because he just gives the right prompts for a technique of how to swing or how to throw or whatever. And I think that if we can just give those little touches, those little prompts to our kiddos and remind them, just I think it helps. It's loving. It's just a reminder. They can choose whether they want to do it or not, but they'll see the consequences pretty quick. It just allows a feedback loop that's really fast,
yeah,
to
yeah,
come back.
yeah. I swim most lunchtimes, and sometimes I see that there's a swim instructor, and I don't see him doing this anymore. So maybe he's cottoned on to something that's more appropriate, like your buddy coaching his son. He used to video people swimming, and then I'd seen him. I'd see him watching the video with the
Yeah.
the adult that he's teaching, right? And he'd be talking to that adult for half an hour,
Yeah.
and I'm just thinking, like you said, 3 or 5 words,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That guy was probably that's probably giving the guy more like 3,000 words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. That's
I mean,
true.
I used to be able to, I was in publishing and I used to be able to proofread and edit 2,000 words in about half an hour. So we can speak faster than we can edit and write. So
Yeah.
he probably was giving that guy 3,000 words.
Yeah.
And you gave an upper limit of five.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not saying this is a science, listeners, right? We're not saying
Yeah.
two, you can't do two, and you
Yeah.
can't do six. We're
Yeah.
trying to get but talking at somebody for half an hour, and he's probably
Okay.
just talking about, like just break it down,
Yeah.
like do
Your
you,
hand.
yeah, break it down with the hand. Are your fingers all together,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
are they all open, or are they somewhere between? Right, well, try that. How does that feel? And come back
Mhm.
and, do two lessons. The
Yeah.
feedback loop, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that feedback loop is pretty important, particularly for kiddos where you get it fast, right? You're not in trouble. I'm just giving you feedback, you
Okay.
know?
Right. I'm going to go, I'm going to dip in with one of my favorite distinctions, if I
Yeah.
may, Matt, right? Just a little bit of feedback for you. And we
Mhm.
sync. Just a little bit of feedback. A mentor of mine talked about this ages ago, and it stuck with me. Feed
Mhm.
forward.
Mm.
Feed forward,
Oh,
not
yeah,
feedback.
feedback. That's clever. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and while we're on that, mindset, right? Mind fluid rather than
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah.
Mindset, like set, is like
Oh,
concrete,
stuff.
isn't it? Yeah.
Hmm.
But mind
That's
fluid. Yeah.
yeah.
But it all goes back to the curiosity thing, right?
Yeah.
It all goes back to curiosity and if we can, like imbuing that curiosity in our
Yeah.
kids, or at least not trampling it down. That's the other
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Hmm. That's real good.
How do you do that? I mean, do you do that? Do you do that consciously with your kids in terms of curiosity and growth and feed forward? Have you got
Yeah.
any? But you might be doing it I said, do you do it consciously? Because I'm figuring you might be doing it unconsciously, Matt.
Yeah. No, I think, well, I think I probably have to do it consciously because I mean, I'm a human, and so when I get home, I think too much about numero uno, which is myself, and so I have to kind of decide, I'm going to do it different. And I think if we put those structures in place, we're able to kind of just do that. For example, every night I have, just like there's bedtime routines, right? So I have a saying, I have routines that I go through, and the kids love it. And so it reminds me to to engage in those routine things. And so um I have got to have, for me, I've got to have structures in place in order to actually do to be good at that. I think about I play very little golf, but I would always, if I brought my 9 iron and my putter with me, and I, chip and then I putt, I would always leave it behind. I would leave my 9 iron behind, and so what I had to do is I had to set it so that I would step on it, so it had to be between the hole and the cart. And there's so many things that I have to put a tripwire up to remember um, to do those. Um, so I'll grab a water bottle before, real early on, put it in my car because I know I'm going to pick up a kiddo. So I try and do things early while I'm not in the moment. So
Yeah.
it's not conscious. I know it is conscious. I have to think about it. It's just not as frequent as I would like.
Right.
It-
But it's habit though as well. If it's routine, it's habit.
yeah,
Yeah.
there are habits in place. Mhm.
Yeah.
It's true.
I've got a question on
Yeah.
that. But because you talked about earlier, coming from a religious perspective on this,
Yeah.
because I think about habits. Is it monks wear habits, or
Oh, like, yeah, yeah.
yeah?
Or
Is there a
nuns too.
relationship?
Mhm.
Is there a
Yeah.
relationship between
Yeah.
kind of what we wear and what we do? Or is it just a coincidence?
Oh, I think I think everything we do, I think, it talks about in scripture that everything we do is, if we render it holy, it's, if we understand that what we're doing is for that, for that purpose. I know that I believe nuns wear habits as well, and cassocks is another word I've heard
Yeah.
for Orthodox, and and I've got a friend that's Orthodox, and she talks about how everything is very purposeful, and I think if we can, I think stepping into that purposefulness, I don't know how to say that otherwise, but it brings value to when it comes to raising the kiddos, is our chance to really just um, yeah, embrace those habits. And children get a lot of comfort from routine. They get a lot of comfort from habit because I think I've talked to my child about this. He wanted to run an errand over the on Saturday, and I was like, we don't have time to do that, buddy. I'm sorry. And I was like, it really, I got to think about it. It's hard to be a kid because you can't do what you want to do. You don't have the money, you don't have the wheels to get there, and so he has no control. And by the end of the day, I, with great joy, relented and said, let's go do it. We have a 5 minute, we have a, 15-minute window, let's go. And so we did it. And so um it was they I think they love habits because there's control in those habits. There's control in those things. And we as adults, we can set those structures up in place in our lives to to benefit to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Feels like a
Yeah.
good place to bring it in, Matt.
Yeah.
It's flown by, right?
It has. Yeah, it has. I can't wait to do this again.
Yeah.
Great to talk to.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, listeners, Matt and I are having another discussion, but
We
in
are.
an hour's time, but it won't be for the podcast. Maybe we can do the podcast together as well later in the year. That would be great.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks, listeners. Take care, and we'll speak to you very soon. Take care. Bye bye.